Okay, yeah. So as far as cap rate goes, is it market dependent? Like, does each specific market have a cap rate? Because I remember you saying, ask your agent what the cap rate is.
Yeah, great question. So yes, each market has a different cap rate. So for example, in California where I'm at, it's probably between 2 to 3 cap. In
Hmm.
Oklahoma, where I invest right now, Oklahoma City is probably like a 7 cap, but the more like tertiary markets in Oklahoma, like Enid, where I own my 20 unit, that one's probably like a 9 to 10 cap. So the best way to know cap rates, unfortunately, is either A, you just have to talk to brokers, as I kind of alluded
Hmm.
to earlier. Unfortunately, a lot of brokers aren't, they may not be as forthcoming with the information, to be honest.
Hmm.
And they tend to make it the cap rates a little bit lower than anticipated because it inflates the value,
Hmm.
right? Because you have your net operating income numerator, denominator is cap rate. So if you raise the numerator, you raise the value. If you lower the denominator, which is the cap rate, it raises the value as well. So,
Hmm.
so it while it is nice, it's hard to get an honest opinion. So the best source, to be honest, is you kind of have to buy a property to do it though. The appraisal report. So anytime I bought an apartment complex, the appraiser, they're going to give you analysis of the cap rate and they'll tell you what the market cap rate is for your asset. So that's how I know. So I got my 26 unit that I bought. When I got it appraised, it would say, oh, like Oklahoma City is, I thought it was an 8 cap when I was underwriting it, but they're like, oh,
Hmm.
7.5 cap. So I kind of went down a little bit, which is good for me, right? Because values go up.
Go up, yeah.
Then when I did an appraisal for my 20 unit in the tertiary market, yeah, it was kind of like a 9.5 cap. So after that, I kind of have a sense of what the cap rates are
Hmm.
um, to gauge. So it's no great answer. I mean, it's just kind of typically like the Southeast, like Alabama, Oklahoma, Missouri, possibly Georgia. They're typically like kind of like that 7, 8 cap range.
Okay.
They're more cash flow markets, right? It's more of like cash flow versus like California, Arizona, kind of the coastal states. Those are like lower cap rates where you're not going to get as much cash flow, but you're going to have more natural appreciation. You know,
Hmm.
California, like I'll be honest, like my single family homes I own in California, like geez, they just break even, and that's not even including like property management. I self manage it, and if I have one like repair I need to make, that's technically my negative.
Hmm.
But my single family home that I first bought, 6 years ago, appreciated by $600,000 in 6 years, which is like 100K a year on
Yeah.
average. So, you kind of apply that to apartments, kind of the same thing. Like in California, where I'm at, even the apartment I'm staying in right now, I mean, I'm paying like 2,200. Um, but like, the apartment that I'm living in, it's probably like, I don't know, 300,000 per door. So
Hmm.
you're not even hitting that like 1% rule, or so people call it.
Yeah, in the
It's
beginning.
more of the natural appreciation because, like, California, I mean, it gets a lot of hate, on social media, but at the same time, there's a lot of jobs here. It's great weather. I mean, it's like people will come. Like people are leaving, but people are also coming. So it's just kind
Hmm.
of um, how it is. So yeah, like Oklahoma. That's why I chose the Southeast to invest in because I wanted higher cap rates because I'm gonna have more cash flow. And for me, I'm really focused on cash flow right now because I'm trying to leave my W-2 job. And then eventually, once I leave my W-2 job, at that point, I could potentially, maybe start investing in small apartment complexes in my market in California. But I know that it's more of like an appreciation play versus cash flow. So you kind of want to diversify, right? You might have California over here, which is all appreciation, and then you have like the Southeast states, which is more cash flow. And together, they kind of like create a well balanced portfolio, I'd call it. Um, so yeah, I hope that answers. Do you have a market specifically that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm in the Atlanta market. And I have a couple of deals that some of the people I'm associated with, they closed. And I was looking at I guess it might have been the OM.
Oh
or
yeah.
the appraisal, but it showed that it was 6.2. It was showing 6.25, 6.75, and I was trying to see how did they get that figure because I did use the NOI divided by the purchase price, and I was still not coming up with the figure. So I don't know. I was like, is there something I'm missing? Uh, to get the cap rate.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just the math equation, right? So value,
Hmm.
the purchase price equals NOI divided by the market cap rate. So you know the sales price, right, on the OM,
Hmm.
and then you know the NOI that they're giving you. So it's just kind of basic math where you're dividing the NOI divided by the purchase price and then times it by 100, and then basically you'll get your cap rate. But the issue with the offering memorandum. I'm not sure. I might have
Hmm.
said it in one of my prior videos if you binged it, but it's I call it. It stands. It means lie in Latin. The offering
Hmm.
memorandum is always fabricated to justify the price that the broker wants to sell at. So what happens is that NOI. So NOI is income minus expense, right? That's
Hmm.
basically the equation. So what they do is the income might be accurate, right? And how do you verify the income's accurate? You need a rent roll, right? So how I do it is, let's just say, for simplicity, the rent roll says 10K a month.
Hmm.
So if you times that by 12, that's the income of 120K, right? So you can kind of gauge right there. So if you look at your rent roll, times it by 12, and there's a discrepancy between that number versus what the actual income is, and I usually give about a 10% discrepancy, it should raise some red flags to you, like
Hmm.
what's going on here, like what is fabricated, right?
Hmm.
If they're within like that 5%, 5 to 10% range, I typically feel at least a little bit comfortable to say, okay, it might be honest. But the second part of the equation is expense, right? And you get to look at the expense ratio specifically. So if they don't put at least 50% for expense, it's probably fabricated.
Hmm.
So if your income is 120,000, your expense for simplicity is going to be 60K. And
Hmm.
this includes everything, right? This is property management, any repairs, any water, trash, common area electric, insurance, and this is all before your debt, your loan payment.
Yeah.
So if they don't, so a lot of offer, remember, as you look at it, it'll show, oh, the expense ratio is 35%. I know, like, there's no way an apartment is 35% expense ratio, right? If
Yeah,
you ever
this one
see,
was showing 31.
oh yeah, that's right out the gate. That's really a lie, right? Because at best, you're talking about a mobile home park without any tenant owned with all tenant owned homes, or you just rent out they just pay you for the lot rent. That's
Hmm.
around 35 to 40%. So the fact that they're saying an apartment complex, and how old is that
Hmm.
apartment complex? What age is that apartment?
1960.
Okay, that's like mine. Okay, my both my apartments are 1970s.
Hmm.
Those are called C-class apartment complexes,
Hmm.
which means they're value-add apartment complexes, which
Yeah.
means that you're gonna have to put in a lot of renovation, fix them up, bring it up to code, bring it up to modern day standards. Maybe they done that on the deal and they're trying to sell it, but it's just kind of like, from my experience in Oklahoma, my expense ratio is 55%.
Hmm.
And it shows on both my units, my 20 unit, my 26 unit. So like the fact that they're saying 30%, like that, I right out the gate, I would already round it up to 50%.
Okay.
So like that's why I said like it's completely fabricated, and typically you want to ask for the T12 and the rent roll.
Hmm.
So the T12 is the actual profit and loss statement. So so basically the offer memorandum, it's just kind of like, my joke is the longer it is, the more pages it is, the more they're trying to hide and lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you might saw one of my videos. I underwrote like some A class 50 unit.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the $4 million one.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I came up like it was like 1.5 or $2 million overpriced or something.
Hmm.
And like, and so not like you wasted time, but like this is how you build the reps, right? Like once you
Yeah.
look at these deals, you're gonna start to see like why is the expense ratio always 30%? And to me, it's just like, why are these real estate brokers blatantly lying to me? Like they've been in the industry for so long. They always talk about like, oh, I've sold transact $200 million worth of real estate. I'm like, but I did 2 deals, not even 2 deals, and I already know the expense ratio. It's not 30%. Like, there's no way that's remotely possible. And then if you look at their insurance costs, it's usually way too little. Like, if you look at their insurance, like, did they list how much the insurance is on the OM?
Let me see. I just had a quick snippet of it.
Sometimes they show it, but sometimes they don't. But like, it's usually way too low. Like one time I looked at a deal. I think the deal I looked at, it was like 5K. And I know for a fact, like, my insurance policies right now are at least like 14K for my 20 unit and 22K for my 26 unit. So it's replacement cost insurance. This is good insurance, right? So if they quote you 5,000, it's the cheapest insurance ever. That basically, it's just for the sake of having insurance. That's it, but it doesn't do anything. If your apartment burned to the ground, it's not going to do anything for you. Like, it's so bare bones. So that's why I came to the point where, like, I give brokers a hard time a little bit, but I've never gotten a good deal off LoopNet. I've never been given a good deal from a broker. But I underwrite those deals just for me to practice and for me to kind of learn about the market a little bit. So it's kind of more of an exercise for me. But I have brokers send me pocket listings all the time in Oklahoma, where in my market, I can look at a deal in like 2 minutes or less, and I already know what questions to ask. I'm like, all right, if you want 65K per unit, every single unit better be renovated, because that's the value for a C-class apartment complex right now.
Yeah.
And that you're talking everything new, right? New kitchen, new floor, new bathroom, new paint, new roof. You're everything renovated. But they're trying to sell at 65K per unit, and only half the units are renovated. So I said, in that case, I'm only paying 65K per unit for half those units, and the remaining units that are not renovated, you better be selling me at a discount. Right? Because maybe I'll buy it for 30K per unit. I'll put in 10 to 15K per unit, be all in for 45K per unit, and it's worth 65K per unit. So my margin is 20K per door for the remaining. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I just said, well, if you want me to buy 65K per door, I'll pay that, but give me do creative financing with me. Give me terms. So that's always my back pocket, where if you're so adamant about price, I'll give you price, but you give me terms. The terms have to be favorable for me. So I can cash out and then do the value add and make sure when I cash out refinance that the value is justified to pay back this higher price down the road, right? So that's just kind of how I think of deals at a very quick level.
Am I able to, because I think this looks like the appraisal, am I able to share my screen? Is that
yeah, go ahead. Do you have does it let you?
Let me see.
Let me see if I can give
window. Okay, yeah.
Does it allow you to share?
Yeah. Are you?
I can see it.
Okay, let me blow it up. So I think this is from the appraisal, because I was looking back and it says date of inspection. And so, I mean, yeah, you have the information right here. Purchase price, 2,100. And then these are the financials. So
they want 2.1 million, or how much?
That's what they purchased it for.
Okay, how much are they trying to sell it for?
It's already been sold. This is just a past deal that I was going over just to see, what the numbers look like.
Do you know how much it was sold for?
It sold for 2.1. I don't remember what it was listed for.
Okay. Yeah, so out the gate, why I asked that was because I want to calculate price per unit, right? So that 2.1 million, this is a 17 unit.
Yes.
So it's about 123K per door, right? So out the gate, if you want the 1% rule, your rents have to be about 1,200 per door. And I'm not sure if this is hitting it, but this actually looks exactly like my 26 unit apartment complex. This is typical, right? C-class value add. Right here, where it's 17 units, it's about 12,000 square foot. That's as big as my 20 unit. So I guarantee you the insurance, if it's similar Georgia is similar to Oklahoma. This insurance is probably about 14K. And then
14,000.
because it's
Okay.
17 units, your expense ratio, I guarantee you, it's about 50 to 55% minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like mine, right? This is like my same exact asset class.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's the 1960s, same thing with me, right? You might need a new roof, maybe a new electrical, things start to happen, right? But it's nice that they sent you this appraisal report. I like that transparency at least, right? Because it means a
Mm-hmm.
lot. You can show this. So here it says flood hazard zone. I'm not sure it's zone X. I'm not sure what that means, but that's another concern with insurance, right? If it's in a flood zone, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
good luck with insurance, right? Because they'll see it's on the map. And what I hate about buying in flood zones is that it's out of your control. Let's just say it does flood there, right? Your insurance will be so volatile. Like a lot of people will pull out. They won't want to renew your insurance policy. And it may double or triple how much you pay. And that could
Mm-hmm.
be catastrophic, right? Imagine you're paying
Yeah.
like 14K and all of a sudden they double it to 28K. Geez, I mean, that's eating your cash flow right there. Like
Yeah.
you're done. So that's why I actually, like in my course, I have a video about deals not to buy, and one was areas in flood zones. Because for me, it's just too much risk for me. Like for me, I buy and hold real estate long term, and I just
Mm-hmm.
don't want that risk of being in a flood zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, if I were to get this type of deal under contract, honestly, I'd probably just try to wholesale it and get that quick profit,
And
right?
actually drove past the property. I don't think it's because it's in Midtown, like in the
Okay,
center. So there's no way. I think the zone X. I mean, it's not.
it's not in the flood zone. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, then that's good then. Thanks for sharing that because yeah, but
Hmm.
that's my thought on like flood zones, right? Just
Yeah.
your education. And then let's see here. So basically, usually you'll give the financials honestly to appraisal, but they look like they lied a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but right out the gate, basically it's 270K. Expense ratio is 31%. No way. No way is it
Hmm.
31% out the gate, right? So they're trying to justify a higher value,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And they say it's 95% occupied, stabilized. Um, and right here they have valuations, right? So income approach as completed, stabilized. So this is assuming that you execute this plan, right? What's the plan?
Hmm.
Are you renovating everything and you're going to rent it at market rent? That's probably what they're referring to. So they think
Yeah.
that's worth 3 million, right?
Hmm.
And as is, it's worth 2.2 million. So this guy bought it with 100K, 150K equity day one. So that's good,
Hmm.
right? That's good. And then sales comparison approach. So typically that's price per unit, right? So
Hmm.
basically that market, same thing. They think it's about 175K per unit of fully renovated, and it's gonna be worth 3 million. So once again, it's a good sign, right?
Hmm.
But my only concern is like I think they fabricated the expense ratio. Like I don't know how they got that expense ratio of 31%. Like no appraisal should take that, right? Like I don't even know how you can just, especially for a 17 unit apartment complex. Like if you're talking like 200, 300 units, maybe I would buy it at 30%.
Hmm.
But even then, at 300 units or 200 units, you're talking A-class apartment complexes, right? At that point, they typically
Hmm.
have a pool, they have a gym, they have a, kind of a business area, and it costs to maintain that. So it raises your cost. So I don't know how he got that, but that's probably how they've justified higher, um, a higher appraisal value. So if let's
Hmm.
just say in a year or two they execute the value add strategy and the reality of the expense ratio is 55%, well, guess what's going to happen to the value? It's not going to be 3 million.
3 million. Yeah.
It's going to be down, right? But
Hmm.
even with that, you have to look at your margin, right? So I would underwrite this deal assuming 50% expense ratio,
Hmm.
that valuation, and then if it's a good margin of how much you buy it at, how much you're putting in to renovate it, and then the final price. Like if you're all in for 70% of the ARV, you're good, right?
Hmm.
So, I'm not knocking the deal, but like you just have to like be realistic with the underwriting. So 31 out the gate, that's impossible for a 17 unit. I mean, unless you're self-managing that thing. and buying the cheapest insurance and yeah, and not really fixing
Like,
things.
yeah.
So yeah, is there more to this? Can you scroll down a little bit? Let me see what else is.
No, that's
Oh,
actually
that's it.
all I have from it.
But yeah, this is great information, right? So
Hmm.
now that I see this, I do think this is in like Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, it's a hot market. I know.
Yeah.
I believe it's probably around a 6-7 cap. It's a little bit hotter of a market, I'd say, compared to like where I'm at in Oklahoma and Alabama, Arkansas, Missouri. Those are like a little bit more like 7 to 8 cap. So I think it is safe to probably assume you're probably at like a 6 or 7 cap. So this is
Hmm.
a C class apartment. So they're saying about 6.25, but an A class, you're probably going to be like, usually it's about 1 cap rate lower. So if it's an
Hmm.
A class, you're talking about 5.25,
Okay.
and that's about right. So, and the B class is like usually in the middle, right? So it's going to be like the
Hmm.
midpoint. So that sounds about right, I'd say. But like I said, the only thing fabricated here in my mind is the expense ratio. Like, no way. No way.
Okay. Yeah.
And do you know
Are
what rents
you
are for this area,
what's
for
that?
that type of unit?
Uh, for rents. Let's see. That's the thing. I I've actually heard of the area before, and I know it's not the best area, but like in the little pocket that it's in, but you know, 5 minutes away, it's like super nice. It's like West Midtown. So it's like you can get rents probably. I want to say maybe like 1,300, 1,200, like you said.
Okay.
Um,
So it's like a 1 bed. Is that for a 1 bed or 2 bed? For that
um,
1300 range.
that'll probably be for, yeah, one bedroom.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So like right there, like it hit the 1% rule, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I do think if these numbers are true, minus the expense ratio, like I think it's still a good deal in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? It may not be worth 3 million, especially at these interest rates today. But if you stabilize it over the next few years and hopefully interest rates go down and your expense ratio is around 50%, like I still think like this will be a pretty win cash out refinance, assuming you
Mm-hmm.
did it well. So, he can learn a lot from this deal. So I thought it's not terrible um, for this. And, it's probably in the path of progress, but you're local to the market, so you can drive by. Like for me, if I'm doing due diligence, I drive by multiple times a day, right? You want to go
Mm-hmm.
time, nighttime, weekend, weekday. Are there people loitering out there? Does it look kind of sketchy? Is it near like a liquor store? Are people just kind of sitting out there? Do people loiter, or is it kind of more like your average, workforce housing? They just
No,
kind of
this area is kind of sketchy.
yeah, and that's why maybe they buy at a margin, right? But I'm learning
Mm-hmm.
my mobile home park that I'm selling right now. Oh my god! And in Selma, Alabama, like don't compromise location. Like the headache and the stress that you deal with for location, like no amount of money, unfortunately, no amount of money can fix a bad area.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can pump in as much money as you want, but if you don't attract the right tenants, you'll never change that apartment or that asset around. Like my
Mm-hmm.
20 unit, man, the client, the renters I inherited, they weren't the greatest, right? And I came in there, a lot of them left. We evicted a few, but now we're bringing in better tenants. And then these tenants are like your workforce housing, right? They're kind of like younger, they work, they're quiet, they play by the rules. And once you start to get a couple of those in there, it kind of compounds, right? Because it'll attract other people. Like, oh, it looks like a great area, a great place to live in. So you kind of change your reputation immediately. And because mine isn't, I would say it's kind of similar location as this, where it's like, yeah, it's like a little. Unfortunately, homeless people were like kind of hanging around there, but
Mm-hmm.
because the renters were kind of letting the homeless people hang around there. But now these new tenants, they don't allow that. If they see homeless people, they'll call the cops. We installed signs that say no trespassing. So if the cops come, the cops can say, they can point to the sign and say, hey, you're not allowed to trespass here. It's private property.
Mm-hmm.
They have some basis to kick out the tenant or kick out these transients. So it might be like that, but yeah, you have to really see the area and like, as you know, in real estate, like, so what I would do is I'd get my property manager that you're working with, or it's whether yourself, but like I'd ask multiple property managers and say, hey, I'm looking at making an offer on this property. What do you think about this address? And if sometimes they immediately said, oh my God, that's Homicide Alley. Don't do it.
Yeah. Listen
and
to
then
me.
you run from that deal. Don't even waste any more time. And now you know it's a bad area. That happened to me. I was looking at a deal in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is kind of the income
Mm,
market in Oklahoma, and I had a great deal. It was like a 50 unit. He wanted 2.5 million. He was willing to seller finance me the deal. Like he said he wanted a 20% down, but he said that I said, hey, can I do 5% increments over 4 years? So 5%,
mm-hmm,
5% in the year one, 5% year two, 5% year three. And then the
mm-hmm,
cash flow would cash flow enough that it would cover that 5% every year.
mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, it's almost like you're doing 5% on
Three,
your,
yeah.
right? So that's how I structure creative deals. But I brought that deal to 3 property managers, and immediately they said, "Oh my God, that's Homicide Alley." Like my kid goes to school nearby there. There's a private Christian school there, and we just saw like the cops investing in homicide right there. So out the gate, I was like, no wonder he was willing to seller finance me that deal because
Mm-hmm,
the area was too bad. So by asking these property managers, they're kind of like your big brother, big sister overlooking behind you. Because if they don't want to touch it, you don't want to touch it. Right.
yeah, yeah. They
So
don't want to step foot on there.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why for me, like if the numbers check out, the next step I do is, if I'm local, obviously I'm gonna drive by various times of the
Mm-hmm,
day. If I'm not local, I'm gonna reach out to my property manager. If they say, the area is decent, then typically I'll ask, hey, like I'm thinking about making an offer on this. Can you just drive by this property during various times of the day and let me know? Take some pictures, see what you see.
mm-hmm.
So they're kind of like your boots on the ground for you. And if that checks out, obviously then you start making the offer and then do your on-site due diligence if they accept your offer. So, um, yeah, I think it's that's what I would kind of do, right? So this area is kind of like it seems like it's maybe a C minus area. Like it can maybe become a C, but maybe it's kind of near D. So,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, it's not worth. And I guarantee you, if you have bad tenants in there, your expense is not going to be 31%. Like evicting
Mm-hmm.
somebody, I'm not sure what the eviction laws are in Atlanta, Georgia, but in Oklahoma, 15 days, you're out in 15 days.
Okay.
And usually people know that. So once you give them eviction notice, they already leave before the 15 days because they don't want to deal with the court and have it on their record. So they usually
Mm-hmm.
leave. I assume Atlanta is landlord friendly, but I don't know.
Yeah. Um, Going back to this, I was looking at the numbers at a 50% expense ratio, and the gross, or excuse me, the net operating income is like 136K instead of 187. And
Yeah.
then once you do that by the cap rate, you're at 2.1
Yep.
million. Um, and I mean, it's 2.186 is the full amount. So would you say that this is a good buy given that you're running it at 50% expense ratio?
Yeah. So
And
the cap
mhm,
rate going to be like what half the income is 135K roughly, and then you divide by 2.1 million, so that's a 6.45 cap. So
mhm,
that's not terrible, but then like that's stabilized. It's a 6.25, right? So you only have a 0.25 margin in cap rate for your potential, right? So
mm.
that's how I kind of think of it too. So for
Okay,
me,
so this is a stabilized number.
yes,
Um,
you're
okay,
buying at a 6.5 cap, but stabilized at 6.25 cap. That's not much of a margin. But
okay.
that's assuming if you raise rents, obviously, then there's your margin. So for me, if I were to underwrite it, this is how I would do it, kind of quick and dirty. Basically you take the income, cut it in half, you assume you down 25%, assume that you could probably get between 25 to 30-year amortized loan and interest rates today, assuming you have a good debt to income ratio and your W-2, you're 7.5%. That's what you're getting, right? So at that point, you can calculate what your debt service is, and then you can calculate your net cash flow. Then once you have that net cash flow, you times it by 12, and then you divide it by your down payment, and that's your cash on cash return.
Okay,
So
you kind of lost me.
yeah, that was
With the
fast.
maps. Yeah, that was very so I know you're saying, increasing the rents and then after that It was just that math, like the math. I was trying to get it done because that's how you're calculating the margin, right?
Yeah. So let me actually run the numbers right now. So let me
Mm-hmm.
calculate the mortgage for you.
Okay.
Um, so basically, you got a $2.1 million loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you down 25%, you basically need about 525K down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so write that down, right? Write that down for me. And then
Mm-hmm.
your loan is going to be 75% of 2.1 million. So at 75%, you're talking about 1.575 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's your loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm going to put this in the mortgage calculator. So 175, and I'm going to assume you're getting a 30-year amortized loan. I think I'm getting it on my deal, so I know you can get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interest rate, I'm going to assume 7.5, but this is the best case. So right out the gate, your monthly payment is $11,000 a month
Mm-hmm.
for the loan.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack now. So the gross income was 273K,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's cut that in half. So you have 136K of annual income, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Yeah.
let's divide that by 12 to find the monthly income. So now, guess what? Your um, net operating income after the expense is 11K a month. But guess
Mm-hmm.
what your mortgage is?
11,000.
So you break even, right? So that's usually most deals. So like in that case, either A, you have to put more money down and you get more into the deal, or B, you have to lower the offer price.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you, based on my experience, the moment if you were to buy this asset and it's truly value add, we're assuming we're getting 11K a month in rent right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 11K a month, let's divide that by 17 units. That it's averaging $650 per unit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that much, right?
Yeah.
If the market is around 1,200, and the rents are averaging half almost.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that's could be your value add, right? Like if you truly can buy at a good price, not 2.1 million, and you're able to renovate these units for 15 to 20K each, and then you can double the rents, that's a home run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at this point already, see, like this is at a 7.5% interest rate, right? You're breaking
Yeah.
even, but let's say reverse this back to when I bought my deal. 5% is what I had 4.5%. My monthly payment is 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
Dropped it by $3,000, right? So my income was 11,000, right? After the expense. And I'm minusing 8,000 for my um, debt service. I'm cash flowing 3K a month on this property.
Mm-hmm.
And let's times that by 12. So in a year, we're making 36K in net cash flow a month.
Yeah.
And let's divide that by our down payment because to figure out our cash on cash return, right? So that was
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
at that point, you're getting a 6.8% cash on cash return. So honestly, you rewind this deal 2 years ago with interest rates at 5%. I think it's a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
2 years
5%
ago, the
or
5%. Yeah.
4.5. Yeah, like
Yeah.
at 4.5, that's a good deal. But that's the power of interest rates, right? Like at this point, it raised it by 3% and you're breaking even.
Mm-hmm.
So, it really depends on your strategy, right? Like, okay, if you pay that price and your interest rate is 7.5%, like, first of all, the bank's not going to lend on it because you need a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25.
Yeah. Most hard money lenders. Yeah.
But your DSCR is 1 because your income is
Mm-hmm.
exactly your debt service. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no margin. So out the gate with these interest rates, it's overpriced. But at 4.5% interest, you got yourself a deal. Like I'd say it's a home run deal. I mean, if you can make $3,000 a month, like out the gate, and in reality, when you take over, probably a couple of tenants will leave and stop paying you. But hey, let's just say that cash flow gets cut in half to 1,500. Hey, you got $1,500 extra to like start renovating these units, for a value add
Mm-hmm.
deal. So that's how I kind of look at the deal at a high level. But that's what kind of screwed me because I'm doing a cash out refinance right now, my 20 unit, and my
Mm-hmm.
interest rate 7.5. If I had a 5% or 4.5% interest rate, oh, this deal would be done already. I wouldn't have to like be begging my lender to like tell my story, and the ARV would probably
Make
be
it.
like 200K more, at least 100K more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's like unfortunate of interest rates. Like, it just makes it harder for like, people like me and you to like get deals, right? Kind of get deals. So in this case, like what I would try to do is honestly, like if I was negotiating the seller, I would say, hey, look, if this, if the interest rates were, 2 years ago, I would pay this price of 2.1 million, right? But
Mm-hmm.
7.5% interest, I'm breaking even, and the bank won't lend on it. So the debt service cover ratio is a ratio of 1. That's me
Mm-hmm.
1.5. So I would just say, hey, like either A, we got two options. Either A, you lower your price, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
price that makes sense based on the DSCR. So you can backtrack, right? So basically, what's your loan amount to hit that DSCR of 1.25? Easy, right? You just take the um, your income,
Okay.
yeah, your income, and then you basically need times or divide it by 1.25. So your
Mm-hmm.
monthly loan payment has to be around 8,800. So
Mm-hmm.
backtrack, right? What's the loan amount? That's 8,800 a month, and then that's from there you'll figure out your offer price. That's option one.
Mm-hmm.
Option two, which hopefully sounds a bit better to the seller, is hey, I'll give you 2.1 million, but can I take over this property subject to if there's a loan on it? And
Mm-hmm.
I'll just make the payments on your behalf. I'll pay you, and then you pay your lender.
Mm-hmm.
Inherit their interest rate. Hopefully, it's lower than 7.5. Probably,
Yeah.
right? And then the difference between that loan and how much I'm paying, I could also pay you some interest on that money as well, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say he has like he's selling for 2.1. Let's say he has a $1.5 million loan on it. That 600K margin, you can pay him interest rate on that money as well, whatever that.
Okay.
So in that way, you can basically get in the deal of maybe low down or zero down. Hopefully, you'll still cash flow, have the money to renovate it, raise the rents. In this case, we can potentially double the rents, right? Because what you're telling
Mm-hmm.
me, let's just take 1,200 each unit times 17 units. That's 20K a month in rents.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's truly the case, you got a pretty good margin there. So at that point, you would go in, renovate a couple, like 4 units at a time, usually, rent those out, see what you get for rents, right? If you hit your rent, great, continue those renovations. If you don't, let's say you think you're getting 1,200, but you end up getting 900. At that point, you're like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to renovate these as nice as I thought. Just do basic rent readies, make it just lipstick on a pig, right? Type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Make it presentable, make it clean, make it functional. And it may cost you maybe 5K to do that versus spending 15 to 20K per full renovation. And at that point, you can do a more affordable units. So that's basically how I do my units, right? Like I'll renovate the first couple pretty nice, like really nice. And then I'll test the market. If it does well, great, continue. If it doesn't, then I'll say, you know what? I don't need to renovate these as nice as I thought because the market doesn't demand it right now.
Okay. Yeah. Smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So that's a quick, so kind of summarize old interest rates from 2 years ago. I like the deal, right? Assuming it's
Mm-hmm.
not a bad area. If it's a
Yeah.
bad area, even if it cash flows 3K a month, walk away. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you have one bad deal, one bad experience, it'll make you hate real estate forever. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a mobile home park. I'm having such a bad experience right now. I never want to do mobile home parks again after I sell this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was stupid to diversify from apartments to mobile home parks. And the first, I should have doubled down on apartments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shiny object syndrome. But so if the numbers make sense, but it's a bad area, not worth it. Like just walk away. Worst case, you can get under contract. You can try to wholesale it, make quick, 50K or whatever on the deal, and maybe someone else will do it, right? So that's how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it makes sense number wise, but I don't like the area, I would just try to be honest with the owners and hey, like I want to give you your offer price, but I'm going to try to honestly wholesale it and find the buyers who may like the deal, and I'll just be transparent throughout the process, right? Like so, you're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to pull their leg, right? Like what my current buyer is doing from a home park, he's like just not communicating at all on the last week before we're closing, and it's just kind of like, okay, what's going on
Oh,
here?
they're
Just
getting rid of it? Like you're selling it right now?
yeah, I'm actually in the process of trying to sell it, and we were supposed to actually close today, and then the
Mm-hmm.
the, the buyer just went MIA. just went off the planet of the Earth. I'm like, all right, well, if you're going missing, that tells me my answer. Maybe you're not serious, or what's going on. And if that's the case, we just terminate the contract and I keep your earnest money deposit.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I learned is, yeah, it's like I should have done a little more vetting on the buyer that I was working with. That's why I like working direct with people. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're the seller. I want to talk to you directly versus I talk to my broker who talks to your broker and that broker talks to you. By the time it gets to you, the message is like already misconstrued, or it's like playing telephone, right? So that's what I hate. Like that's why I hate honestly working with brokers. Like from my experience so far, they've hindered me more than helped me. Like I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
just go straight to the owner and hey, let's just make this a win-win situation, right? And after working with this buyer that's like so flaky, it made me realize how great of a buyer I am. Like I'm the easiest buyer to work with. Like you text me, I communicate immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think what happened was he's trying to raise money. He just doesn't have the money raised yet. And he doesn't want me to cancel the contract. But instead of just saying, hey, I need more time to raise money, he just
You just want ghost. Yeah.
yeah, he's just ghosting me. And I'm just like, all right. And maybe this is how they do business in mobile home parks. It's an older industry, right? It's more people with like, the gray hairs, the white hairs, and that's the old way of doing it. But I'm a millennial, and millennials, we like transparency, communication, and just tell me what you need, and I'll be pragmatic about it. Like, hey, if you want more time, then you have to pay for an extension. If you want to extend the contract, it's going to cost money.
Mm-hmm.
Extend, but just be transparent. And if you need help raising money, and you tell me, I'll help you raise money. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just basic things like that. Like they think like by withholding information, it's actually helping them. Like, no, like if anything, no communication means that you're not serious about the deal. So like why would I trust anything you say afterwards if you're not
Mm-hmm.
transparent, not communicating? So it's just kind of funny. And like and the broker was giving like some like non-answer, that political dance around where they kind of answer but not really answer. And I literally just told the broker at the end, like, you just answered the question about answering the question. And he just got really quiet. I'm just like, dude, this
But
is your
he's out of financing contingency, right? So
yeah, no, the contract's already over. Like it was
yeah,
supposed to close 2 days ago. So technically the contract's dead. Like,
yeah.
the contract's done, right? I'm just like, at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I'm like, you want more time? Give me money. If not, or we close tomorrow, or I just move on. So
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty eye-opening to me. So what I'm kind of learning, which may sound counterintuitive, it's actually easier to buy than it is to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you buy, it's within your control,
Yeah.
right? Like you have the money or not, or if you can raise the money or not. But as a seller, you're kind of left in the dark, right? And then for me, I was kind of, he was kind of breadcrumbing me a little bit, but like I thought he could do it. He had the money ready, but maybe not, probably not, right? At this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just kind of those signs and those red flags, right? Like, and in my course, I kind of another person you don't want to work with bad sellers or bad
Mm-hmm.
owners and bad sellers. You don't want to work with bad people because if they're bad people, they're going to lie about things, right? And you have to
Mm-hmm.
trust that it's correct. That's why I say you have to trust but verify. So like now, if I were to sell again, hey, I want to talk to you as a buyer, and also I want to see proof of funds. Like, show me your money, and put your money where your mouth is, right? If you say you're doing it, well, like if you said you mailed out documents, what do you typically have? You have proof of a shipping tracking. So
Mm-hmm.
truly mailed it, you can easily provide me with your FedEx shipping tracking number, right? So these are little things that you pick up as you go through and like trust but verify, right? So for me, like if I mail my documents, usually as a buyer, I'll be like, hey, seller, look at my tracking ticket. I just mailed it. And then
Mm-hmm.
basically know that I took care of my portion, right? But when you start working with people that like, the last minute they ghost you, they don't communicate, like, they don't respect the contract, right? Like, like the contract ended, and it's they're not respecting it. So it's kind of like interesting. So flip that for you because you're trying to buy, but if the seller's kind of like, they're kind of flip-flopping a little bit, kind of giving you mixed messages here and there. They're not very communicative. They may not be as motivated. They may be hiding stuff, but usually the buyers that are motivated, they're usually very transparent. They communicate pretty fast. You just can tell that the deal's kind of progressing along nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus with the seller, the buyer that I'm working with, like it just doesn't feel like sometimes you're questioning yourself, like, is this person serious or are they not? If you have that inkling, most likely your gut's correct with that. So sorry, that was a huge side tangent right there. I was venting a little bit. But any other questions that you had?
I didn't know if Jonathan had any question. I feel like if he has anything, he can go ahead.
Oh yeah, hey Jonathan, thanks for hopping on. Any questions? I was kind of going on a huge side tangent there, but any questions that you had about multifamily or what we were discussing about earlier? Oh, maybe just listening. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so right now, I was actually in the process of um, structuring a owner financing deal. And so one of the things I've been looking at is, do you kind of have like, some people say like 10-5-5. Obviously, if you can get zero interest, that's great. That's great. But like for what is it? The length of the loan, you obviously want to do 30 years. I guess my biggest thing is like balloons. Like, is that kind of what you're doing on your 30, on your owner financing? Or do you try and stretch it for, the whole 30 years?
Yeah, you must have watched my video because I said 10-5-5.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, for those who don't know, 10% down, 5% interest, 5-year term, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a guideline, right? So the reality is you want to structure the seller financing based on the seller motivation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's the seller? If the seller motivation is that they want mailbox money for the rest of their life and to pass on to their kid, then obviously you want more than 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking 20, 30, 40 years, right? And then if they're not worried about money, right? Let's just say they're selling this, they just want that mailbox money. At that point, you can probably negotiate close to zero down, right? Or maybe less. Or do the strategy, if they want 10% down, break it up. Do 5% at the close and 5% year one.
Mm-hmm.
Or they want 20% down, break it up over a couple of years and explain that by doing this, you can defer your capital gains tax, or you pay less capital gains tax. Because I think the tax code is about $50K a year, assuming you owned it for over a year,
Mm-hmm.
tax free. So why would I give you $100K as a down payment and you're paying, tax on that $50K?
Whatever the tax
We
is.
can break
Yeah.
it. I'm giving you $50K a year and it's zero taxes, right? So
Okay.
that can
Mm-hmm.
save them a little bit of money right there. So, but if the seller says, you know what, I want to sell this deal, I want to seller finance it to you, but I want to pump this money into something else later down the road, like another business, or maybe I want to do something else with buy more real estate. In that case, your term might be a little bit less, right? So at that point, it's like, okay, well, how much time do you need to execute your value add strategy? Because the goal is you buy it at a certain price, you
Mm-hmm.
force depreciation go up, and then you have to get a bank loan on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you need cushion, right? Cushion number one is to do your value add strategy. So you have to renovate all these units, right? And then most likely you kick out tenants, you renovate it, and either rent out to new tenants. And then on top of that, hopefully when you do that, interest rates are reasonable, not like what I'm going through right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, if it's me, I always ask for 5 if they want short term. Then I can work
Mm-hmm.
there a little bit, or I can say, hey, if they want 2 years, they're adamant about it. You can say, I'll give you a 2-year term, but I want an auto extension if I'm unable to cash out refinance with another lender.
Mm-hmm.
And because the sellers are usually confident, oh yeah, my apartment will cash out refinance easy because most owners are confident with their deal, right?
Yeah.
But then that's how you protect yourself while also giving them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do. I would say, hey, I'll give you 2 years. I'll ask for 5. They want 2. So I'll give you 2 years, but please, at the end of 2 years, if I try to cash out refinance of another bank or get another loan on it and I'm not successful, I want this auto extended for another 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That way it protects you.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing again, right? The next 2 years, it has to auto extend. So you always have to build that in as your protection. So that's what I would recommend. But yes, obviously, if it was me and you, yeah, I don't want 0% down, 0% interest, and as long term as possible.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you were to ask me, that's what I would want. And no banks. You can close. All you need is 30 days. Give yourself like 3-4 weeks of due diligence, and then after that, another 2 weeks to close. Right. And then, but typically it's hard to get 0 done because they want some skin in the game. But you can say like, hey, I'm renovating your units. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, if something happens to me and you foreclose on me, you got all the money I pumped into that deal. That's my
Mm-hmm.
skin in the game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
Right. If I'm spending 20K to renovate per unit and I'm renovating like 20 units, that's my skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
If I fail and you take over the property as a bank, then you got your property back plus all the renovations I did.
Mm-hmm. And the
So
time and effort.
and the
So,
time and effort, and you got to
yeah.
maybe cruise for a couple of years and get cash flow, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's how you gotta think, right? If you kind of see how I'm thinking, like, okay, how
Yeah.
do I give you what you want, but still make it beneficial for me? And once
Mm-hmm.
they see that you're thinking and talking like that, it builds trust. That this
Mm-hmm.
guy's not just trying to come in here and fleece me. He's actually trying to like make it a win-win situation. And he seems very reasonable. Like most people are reasonable. It's a give and take, right? Like, yeah, I'll if you give me this, I'll give you this. It's kind of like that, right? So that's why for me, like, hopefully my mobile part closes and then I cash out refinance my 20 unit, but I'll be sitting on all my initial cash. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to be looking for deals for a while, but in this current interest rate market, I'm going creative finance all the way. That's probably the
Mm-hmm.
method approach if I were to find my next deal. Because they probably got a good interest rate if they bought in the past like 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be honest, it's probably good. And I know the market that I'm in. I know what I can do to raise the rents, and I just can tell them like, I'll give you your price, but please sell it for me a deal. I can close faster, and my skin in the game is my down payment or my renovation. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a little bit. I'll be, I'll try to give like maybe 5% or something as low as possible. I'm saying my down payment is I'm going to renovate these units for
Mm-hmm.
you, and make this nice and show them a list of what I do, because typically I usually will ask, like, I do my my inspection. I get all the things that need to be repaired, and I send them the list and say, hey, I want seller repair credit.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I cut if you watch my video, my 26 units, that's how I cut my down payment in half. My down payment was supposed to be 120K.
Mm-hmm.
I had about 120K worth of repairs, and I asked the seller, can I get 120K in seller repair credit? I had a list of everything. New roof, 30K. All these water heaters are out of code and they're end of life. It's going to cost me $600 per water heater to replace this many water heaters. Electrical panel is out of compliance. It's a safety hazard. This much to replace each electrical panel. These condensers I broke it down. And then I freaked the guy out a little bit. Like, oh, shoot. Like, I don't want to give him 125K, 120K. And he just said, I'm not at the properties as is, but if you remove some stuff, I may consider. I just said, okay, let me talk to our property manager, see what needs immediate rectification to make sure it's a safe environment for the tenants. So I
Mm-hmm.
cut the list in half, and it ended up becoming 60K, and he agreed. So what did I do? I cut my down payment in half. So I only put 60K down. So I only down about 12.5% versus 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do the same thing. If I'm buying this property, seller financing, I'm trying to pitch 0% down, I will still pay for my inspection report. Inspect all units. Don't be cheap. Inspect
Mm-hmm.
all units. Get bids for everything that needs repair, and just say, hey, look at this list. When I come, I'm gonna make all these repairs. That's my down payment. Because when you show them a hard physical number and you had like general contractor, inspector, inspect it, give you quotes, it's not me versus you. It's me looking at this data point objectively, or this inspection report objectively together, and say, I'm gonna fix all these issues. So that's your down payment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's It's that, or you can negotiate at the end. Maybe at the end, once I'm done doing my cash out refinance, I'll give you your down payment at the end. That can be
Mm-hmm.
too, right? Like, hey, like I want to give you 5% down, but can I do it after I did the full value add strategy and did my cash out refinance? And I'll pay you a lump sum then. But until then, my renovation is my down payment. So you always have to think like, what skin in the game do you have? And if you
Mm-hmm.
openly share the skin in the game that you have in this deal, it makes you seem more trustworthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why, like for my seller that's like ghosting me, I'm only going to build trust of him if he gives me more money because he has more skin in the game, more to lose.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't and he's not serious, I cancel the contract. So always think about like, what's the skin in the game? And that's how you'll know their motivations and vice versa. So that's how I would go about it if I were you.
Got it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to present him with some options.
What were you thinking? Like, what type of terms were you thinking, or what's the purchase price and the rent? Do you have those numbers?
So this was actually that 4 unit I was telling you about.
Oh, got it.
And just trying to see, I was trying to see where he wanted something larger, so he didn't really come out and say it. So I was just gonna go ahead and crunch the numbers. I have a background in lending, so the broker I used to work for, she has a lot of private money lenders. So if it came down to that, I was gonna try and do
Mm.
interest free, and then get a private money for the down payment, and then just structure it that way.
Yeah, I mean, what type of terms? I mean, I got quoted 11.5% for like,
From a
you know,
private.
from private money and like hard money, interest only, right? So I'm like,
Mm,
geez, I mean, I was at 9.5% about a year ago, but about 11.5%. So, if that's your loan plus you're financing the down payment, you're basically, all in 100% finance. So that's gonna be rough to cash flow unless you're doing like a midterm rental or short-term rental model and bumping up that cash flow. That's not, yeah,
that is another thing, because the area that it's really good, and so they're all 2-1. So I think an Airbnb would be good, but I would just look at the numbers depending on what I could get for the private lender. See
yeah,
what that would be. Um,
because that
but
one
yeah,
is complex, right? So it's not valued based on the income; it's valued based on the sales comps. So
yeah, and then it's like there's my other option would be just to buy it outright from him, because um I was looking at what's on market, and there's a 6 unit, on market for like 823. And I was like, he wants 1.2 for it, but I was like, that's way too much for a quad, even though it's been renovated. The last renovations were done in 17, but I would rather just pay him like, you know, 900 and get a loan for it and just do it that way.
yeah, I mean, if you can like get him to agree to some like seller financing terms, you might be able to wholesale this deal and make like, not much, but you might make like
Hmm.
10 to 50K depending on what you negotiate and right for the right buyer, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I would consider. Like, don't like just because you can't take down yourself, it's fine, but you can still leverage this contact, leverage this negotiation. You lock it under contract. Say, hey, I already got this seller finance deal. I got private money lenders lined up, and then you can wholesale this deal over to somebody that
Hmm.
would make more sense for them if they're doing a 1031 exchange, or maybe they are Airbnb expert and they can do it.
Hmm.
So like, just don't like when you're analyzing. That's how I think of
Don't
it.
don't force a deal if
Don't
they're
force it
really.
for you,
Yeah.
right? If
Hmm.
it feels a little bit forced for you, don't do it, right? Like it's not worth
Hmm.
it. You can still get it under contract, get it some negotiate those terms, and then just wholesale it. Take that profit, and you can save it for the next one that you want to buy, right? So
Hmm.
that's what I kind of learned. Like, because I know you get so like fixated. Especially, I send mailers out, right? I do direct mail, and I get so like fixated on my buyers and wanting to make it work for me. But like sometimes it's just like, you know what? Don't force it, and you can say, hey, you know what? It doesn't work for me, but honestly, I can get this under contract. I think I might be able to have some people that want to buy it at that price that you want. Like, you know, can I get under contract, and I'll try to reach out to my network and do it and
Hmm.
wholesale this deal, and I'll get paid a little commission at closing by the buyer, not by you, but by the buyer, right?
Hmm.
So as long as that, that's what I would do. And like you said, for the right person, I already identified it. If it's Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
find an Airbnb operator, and if it's that hot of an area, yeah, maybe they can make way more. Can make 5K per unit, and then that's 20K. And it might make sense for them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
rental and with these interest rates, it doesn't sound like it would work for like me or you, right?
And that was another thing too. I was thinking like maybe if I could do it like a 12-month interest and get all the tenants out of there because they just re-sign the lease. Because I know as far as the market rent should easily be about $2,000.
Yeah,
Because I actually drove right by the area today. But he has it rented for 1,300, 1,350, you know. So
yeah,
I know it's residential, so you can't really raise the value by increasing rents like that. But from a cash flow perspective, the numbers would make sense.
yeah. And then just the natural
Yeah.
appreciation, right? So you're going to be a little
Hmm.
bit at the mercy of natural appreciation. But like I said, it depends what your objective is. If you kind of want it and cash flowing it, and it would makes sense at Airbnb. So like if it was me and I know that's the end buyer, that's who I'd pitch my deal to if I would
Hmm.
sell it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can find a lot of people who want to do Airbnb. In Atlanta, Georgia is getting kind of hot. I know that. Um,
Hmm.
so that's how I would do it. So it may not make sense for you, but if you can negotiate and get some terms on the table, hey, you have a leg up at least, right? Versus
Hmm.
to say, hey, like here's a deal. At least you can negotiate some stuff that might be appealing to another investor. So that's what my gripe is about brokers. They never lay it on a platter to make it attractive to a buyer, right? Like for me, I structured my mobile home park. They're gonna assume I seller financed my deal, right? Or
Hmm.
no, I bought it seller financed. But on top of that, I'm gonna carry a second position. I'm gonna be in second lien position as well, so that it reduces their down payment and they can assume the loan,
Hmm.
right? So like I already thought ahead, like, all right, like if I want this deal to close fast, I have to be willing to be in a second lien position,
Flexible. Yeah.
flexible, right? So I already laid it on a platter. And despite that, my buyer is still being difficult. I'm like, I literally I handed you this like beautiful like castle, and all you have to do is just communicate, and then you're not. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you think high level as an investor, it makes you better in every aspect, right? Like for me, if I was a broker, like I would translate very well to being a broker. Now that I know
Hmm.
how terrible brokers are, and because I actually own assets and I know how to structure things to be favorable for the end buyer,
Hmm.
right? So, but most brokers are not willing to go that extra length. They just like, here's the deal.
And just want a commission when they could, provide more value.
They
Yeah.
just want to get their commission, like that three
Yeah.
commission, and provide no additional value whatsoever. And I just said, well, why do you think people don't want to work with you, right? It's a relationship based business. If you have happy customers, what do investors do? They come back.
Hmm.
If you come back, like if I bought one good deal from you, believe me, I'm coming back to you multiple times. I'm ready to get another deal. So
Hmm.
if you don't even try, I like at this point, I'm like, I don't even want to work with brokers. They're useless to me right now. 99% are useless, but maybe that 1% one day will come to me.
They might get one. Yeah.
Or
Um,
maybe I'll become the 1%. Yeah.
if you don't mind me asking, because I remember in one of your previous videos with your mobile home park, your plan was to, I think, add more, um, uh, you know, uh,
Homes to it.
homes. Yeah, homes to,
Yeah.
excuse me. And then after that, or collect rent. And then I think the projected ARV was going to be like 6 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, how far along did you get in that, or were you just looking to cash out? And is that why you're just selling it?
Yeah. So it's a huge value add park. So when I bought it, it was like 30 out of 200 lots were occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of the 30, like a lot were not, there's some tenants that weren't paying. So you
Mm-hmm.
basically come in and evict these tenants. And then there's a lot of vacant homes that were just sitting there that need repair. Right. And then what happens is when you have a bunch of vacant homes and not many tenants living there, like you have a bunch of homeless and kind of transients trying to stay in there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I came in, I started fixing up these homes. Right. I had to come in, fix up these homes, and then it costs money, right? You have to come renovate these, and then after that, after I fixed up a decent amount of them, I started bringing in brand new homes.
Mm-hmm.
I basically brought in brand new homes, 100% financed, right? And these homes are about 45K all in. right? That's including purchase, installation, and setting up the skirting, the deck, everything, all in 45K, right? 100% finance.
Mm-hmm.
So my monthly payment is going to be about $400, and I can rent these out for around $750. So
Mm-hmm.
my net is only about $350 per unit, right? So what I quickly learned is when I was buying it, I'm like, it was a lot more capital intensive and time intensive than I would like. And I just thought like, at this point, it's not really worth it for me. And I think I did enough to prove the model to a syndicator who's a larger operator, and they can come in with more money and fill up the park, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I brought to around like 50.
Okay.
But if assuming all 200 was full, yes, this thing is easily worth over 10 million. But it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work. Like I basically need to be full time doing it. This deal,
Mm-hmm.
like living at the park doing it. Versus me, I'm still working full time and I'm doing my apartments as well as this mobile home parks. I just thought, you know what, at this point, like too much of my time, too much energy is focused at that. And that's what made me decide to sell. And, unfortunately, the selling process hasn't been the most smooth for me. You do have a different type of buyer for mobile home parks, right? Versus apartments, you're probably gonna have a little more, I'll describe it like more sophisticated buyers, more sophisticated people. Um, and yeah, it's just kind of like basically more of the story that I learned is if you want to buy a mobile home park, you better be committed to buying a lot of mobile home parks and being vertically integrated because you need
Mm-hmm.
property management in house, you need your renovation crew in house, you need an installer team in house because all those points I just listed will be points of delay and points of money, and you're at the mercy of those people for your value.
Mm-hmm.
So what I learned was if I were to invest with a syndicator for a mobile home park, so what I learned was I want to do mobile home parks again by myself, right? And in the Southeast, it's like Georgia even, it's mostly park owned homes, so you're like a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if the tenants own their home, then they just pay you lot rent. It's a little more passive.
Yeah.
The problem is in some pockets of Alabama and Georgia, they don't have that homeowner mindset, right? So you put them on a rent to own model. But with rent to own model, it sounds great and dandy on paper. Hey, you're going to pay me 50 extra bucks a month for 5 years. And after that, you own it.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great to say, right? But the reality is the one time that water heater breaks and it costs them $500 and they can't afford it, well, guess what? They're going to break their rent to own contract.
Mm-hmm.
So on paper, sounds great to say. Reality, how many people actually make it out of rent to own? No.
Yeah, it's very far and few.
It's hard, right? And then that's why I learned
Mm-hmm.
like me as an individual is not worth it. So I'd rather just do apartments, got a great team, great property management. If property management sucks, I can fire them and have a replacement easily. Mobile
Mm-hmm.
home park, I have an offsite property manager who manages my onsite property manager. My offsite property manager, I call them a C. They're not great, they're not terrible. But how can I replace them? If they're terrible, I have no one to replace them with?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And same with onsite manager. If the onsite manager is terrible, you get rid of them. You're gonna have to screen and bring in a new onsite manager. And usually you pick a resident, right? So it's just like, to me, it's just way too many pieces to operate and a lot more hands-on, a lot more capital intensive that it's just not worth it. Like I honestly would rather do single family homes and do mobile home parks at this point. But I learned a lot doing it, you know, to me, like, if I'm at the assuming this closes, I should make a decent amount of money, but the most of the money is kind of carried back as a second position. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really guaranteed that money per se. But for me, as long as I can get the majority of my money I put into the deal and get out of the deal and then get monthly cash flow after that, I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with that, right? I don't want to get too greedy, and I'd rather just double down on apartments in Oklahoma where I have a really,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I have a video coming out talking about what I learned by scaling rapidly and just having shiny object syndrome and if you're just good at one thing, just do it and you can get rich. Like honestly, you could just buy a bunch of fourplexes in your market over the long period of time. You'll be very wealthy doing that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no right or wrong answer. For me, I'm small multifamily and I don't syndicate, right? Because I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do partners right now. doesn't make sense for me right now. And I can build, yes, I'm gonna build slower, but I mean, once you own like a couple hundred
It's
units, or
ownership, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, like do I want to like have to deal with like investors? Like maybe one investor is going through a divorce and they want to cash out the deal, and now I'm like stressing out dealing with it. Versus if it's just me,
Yeah.
it's more in my control, right? So like what's your goal? Like maybe if I have enough real estate to leave my day job, be financially free, maybe I will syndicate. But even then, like, do I want that job? You know?
No.
So it really depends what your goal is. So like to me, I'm like, I could have just done single families in California and become wealthy off that. I could have just done apartments in Oklahoma and be wealthy off that. Like, why did I deviate and go into mobile home parks? I tried an e-commerce Amazon drop shipping store, which I lost money on. I closed it down. It's not worth it. I tried opening up a pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist. I was like, forget it. It's too much work. Like,
Hmm.
why am I complicating myself? Like, just do one or two things that you know very well, and just do it for a long time, and you will be very wealthy doing that. Like, maybe not hundreds of millions, but you'll be good enough, right? So that was kind of my kind of epiphany, and that's what kind of led me to selling it as well. Like, like I think I could bring this deal all the way. Like, if I really wanted to, I could probably sell it to a syndicator, but still retain equity in the deal.
Hmm.
Like, hey, whatever I put in, that's my equity in the deal, and you give me some equity, and then they bring it the rest of the way. That's another method that I thought about as well. But I just said, you know what, I don't think the mobile home park, it's not my cup of tea.
Hmm.
It's way too much work and way too many factors out of my control, and I don't like that. So for me, it's too much risk than I would like.
Hmm.
But this is value add mobile home park, right? Versus you buy a turnkey mobile home park, different
And
story.
seller finance at that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if it's a turnkey mobile home park, not many issues, and all you're doing is like it's, let's just say 80% occupied, and you just bring in like one or two homes, and it's like 100% occupied. Okay, maybe, and it's all
Hmm.
tenant owned homes, maybe. But even then, like it's just like, why even dive into that when you're already good at, when I'm good at apartments already, and that's like my
Hmm.
specialty. So it's just like, is it worth the squeeze to go there? That's the kind of
Hmm.
thing I'm hearing. I'm even hearing from mobile park syndicators, like Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets. He's just like, yeah, my team, 80% of my team is all mobile home park, and 20% of my team is apartments, but we have the same amount of each asset class.
Hmm.
So it's kind of telling, right? Like right there,
Yeah.
like, and like selling, like, okay, if I want to sell, let's say I'm sick of my assets, right? Trying to sell mobile home park, you have less buyers versus trying to sell an apartment complex.
Hmm.
Many buyers. I get cold calls every day, or not every day, once a month at least,
Hmm.
wanting to buy my apartment complex. No one calls me about my mobile home park, right? So it's just like, you want to think about your exit, because you may hate it. Like maybe right now you want to scale and do big, but maybe you hit a certain point where you're like, you know what, I just want to unload all these and live my life or whatever. And if your apartments or even fourplexes, it's easier to sell, right? Like if I were to sell a single family home, boom, 30 days, easy, probably all
Hmm.
cash, right? Versus a mobile home park, it's like, oh, you got to do their due diligence and then raise their money, and it's just a lot of steps. So so that's what some people don't think about. Like, it sounds cool to say, but like it's so much work. Like, it's so much work to do it. And syndicators only talk about the good stuff because they're trying to sell you to buy. They're
Yeah.
fun, but I operate. I know like the reality. No way. Like, and I kind of respect them a little bit. Like, wow, it's a lot of work. It's not easy.
Hmm.
That so yeah. So cool. Any last questions? I kind of went a little bit over here.
Yeah, one more. So I've been looking at some of the deals, that these guys have been buying, and I noticed the length of, the mortgage company, and the term, and they're like, 2 to 3 years. So I'm guessing there's mainly more value add, and just unloading it after that, or maybe they might refinance. But I called them up, and they said that they're a balance sheet lender, and that it's really, I guess, deal dependent, like the terms are on the deal. Um, what are your thoughts on those types of lenders as opposed to traditional, 25% down, 30-year term? Like, what's kind
Yeah.
of, hmm
Yeah, so my thoughts is there's basically pros and cons to each type of lender, right? So
hmm
me, I call them like tools in the toolbox, and you need multiple tools, right? You need a hammer, a screwdriver, plier, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, yes, the best terms, it's going to be like your traditional lender, right? Like for me, I use Bank of the West for my 26 unit. I'm trying to cash out refinance on my Bank of the West for my 20 unit. And for my 20 unit, they gave me 30-year AM, 7-year fixed, 7.5% interest. And I can cash out refinance my down payment and my renovation costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the best terms, but they're going to scrutinize my tax returns, everything, right? And my tax return doesn't look pretty right now because I'm doing this huge value add mobile home park where I'm pumping in a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I really have to tell them, like, I'm in the process of selling it right now. So they just said, okay, well, if you're in the process of selling it, then, hopefully that's going to improve your DTI, and it will, right, once it's sold. So they give you the best terms, but they're going to look at your tax returns with a magnifying glass. They literally look at everything. Like, why did your W-2 income go down for the past 3 years? Why is this expense so high? Is this one time, is this recurring? You're literally under like a judge getting scrutinized. But if you can make it through it, you get good terms,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the flip side, if you're willing to pay 11.5%, so 4.4 more, the lenders don't care. No tax returns. They just look at the DSCR, right? They
Mm-hmm.
look at your income, and that's it. They're like right now, if Bank of the West fails, I can get 11.5%, pull all my money, but I'm paying 11.5% on my loan. So at that point, I wouldn't pull out all my money. I would replace my loan, hard money loan, with this loan. But it's ironic because my hard money loan's 11.5%, and this DSCR loan 11.5%. So I'm like, it's kind of the same. So I'm actually extending my hard money loan to hopefully 6 months. So hopefully in 6 months, interest rates kind of cool off a little bit, and maybe I can
Mm-hmm.
get Bank of the West to bite if they back out. So I just say it's like pros and cons, and just know that that's what you do, right? If I want it easy, no documents, let's say I have no W-2, my tax return looks terrible. Like I have a W-2, a high income W-2, my tax return looks terrible. Like this
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, they would never question me. So I would say just run it by both, and just keep your options open. And it may suck to do it temporarily, but just know it's temporary, right? Like refinance again in like a couple of years. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my thoughts. And like right now, I'm engaging multiple, and same with local community banks. Same thing. They look at my tax return, they're asking me questions about it, but the interest rates are 8.5 to 9%, 9.5. So it's still higher than Bank of the West, and it's amortized over 20 years, only fixed for 3. So there's more risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fixed is less, interest rates higher, the amortization is less. So what does that mean? My monthly payment goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they might be easier to work with because they're local to the area and they know your apartment complex, right? So I reach out to all 3. And I just want to know my options so I can pick the best option. If option 1 doesn't work, I move on to number 2, move on to number 3, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I view lenders. It's not this or this. You want as many lenders as possible under your Rolodex, and then you reach out to all of them when you do deals. So that's how I kind of do it right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's it. What I have for now. I sent out some mailers this today actually, so maybe hopefully by next week. I'm still doing my SMS as well. So if I
Yeah,
get any deals,
hop on
hopefully
next week.
next Wednesday. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hop on next week and keep me posted. But all right, man. Thank you both for hopping on, and thank you so much for talking with me today.
Absolutely.
And hope to see you guys next week.
All right, see you next week. Bye.